The first thing I heard was the wind, but the first thing I saw was his face. A skull stretched over skin like old paper, eyes sunk so deep they held the streetlight like a guilty coin. He stood in the middle of the road as if he'd always lived there, as if the road had been made for him to walk down. Behind him, a line of silhouettes melted into the fog, dozens of them, slow and patient, their shapes swallowing the lamplight. The whole world smelled like wet cardboard and iron. I had been driving for hours when my engine died, a quiet surrender on a rural stretch with power pylons marching across the fields. At first, I thought it was just a breakdown. Bad timing, older car, no cell signal. Then the silence settled, not the good kind, but the kind that presses your ears inward and makes distant things sound enormous. A radio in a parked car, 2 houses over, spat static like an animal trying to speak. A dog barked once and then stopped, like someone had closed a door on the noise. I stepped out because I believed in small practical things. Check the hood, try the starter again, look for a farmer. The air tasted of rot and cold metal. My breath came out in ragged white and disappeared into the fog. The houses along the lane were dark, curtains drawn tight, as if the town had forgotten to flick the lights back on. One porch had a child's bicycle left on its side, its paint chipped and still wet with dew. Nothing moved except the pylon's slow, electric humming, a thin, mechanical heartbeat over everything. When I walked toward the back of my car, I noticed footprints in the soft verge. Not animal, not exactly human either. Long, dragging marks between shallow prints. They led away from the road and toward the field, then looped back like someone had taken their time deciding how they wanted to die. I laughed once, a short, stupid noise, to keep myself from answering the strange tightness in my throat. He watched me from where he stood. Up close, his jaw didn't quite work right. It hung with a lazy, patient hunger. His shirt was torn, the fabric clinging to gaunt shoulders. When the mist curled around his calves, I could see other faces behind him, their mouths closed, their eyes like empty wells. For a moment, I thought I could count them, 20, 30, then the fog hid the rest. I tried to move, but my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Every instinct screamed to get back in the car, to lock the doors and pretend the world had not rearranged itself into this quiet, patient horror. I fumbled with the handle and realized the keys were warm in my hand. He smiled then, not a smile for me, but a map of teeth as if he recognized something I had left behind. I heard, faint and horrible, the sound of many feet finding rhythm. I fumbled the key until my fingers grazed the metal of the steering wheel, and a new sound cut through the fog. Not the slow shuffle of feet now, but a whispering chorus, like wind through a field of dry teeth. It wasn't wind, it was voices. They rose and fell, syllables broken and wet, and somewhere in that choir, a sound that matched the cadence of my own name. I heard it once, twice, and my knees gave like a bad hinge. I tried the ignition again. The engine tried to catch and died like someone choking on a memory. The headlights flickered to life for a breath, long enough to paint him in stark, sketched lines, and then went dark again. In that burst of light, I saw one of the faces step forward, slow, deliberate, as if obeying a choreography older than cruelty. He moved with the terrible politeness of predators that have learned how to wait. They didn't run. They came in measured steps, each footfall a muted question. Up close, their skin smelled of dry hay and something sweeter, like copper and rot. When they parted around me, I saw more. Faces pressed to windows, shadows leaning from doorways, the child's bicycle lying on its side, now encircled by tiny prints that weren't quite right. One of the faces was familiar in a way that made bile rise, a man at the edge of the crowd who wore a jacket with a small, frayed logo I recognized from a bar I used to go to. Another had my high school haircut, a jagged scar at the eyebrow. My skin crawled as if I were reading a photo album in motion. I backed away and the crowd matched me. When I stopped, they stopped. It felt less like pursuit and more like a correction, the world nudging me back into the path they'd chosen for me. My throat filled with a taste like pennies and old pennies chewable, and then I realized my hands were wet. I looked down, under my nails, under the cuticles, there was dark, dried residue. Not quite blood, not quite mud. Something that seemed to come from between bones. A car horn bleated somewhere, thin and distant, then suddenly deafening. an impossible, neighborly alarm that seemed to come from all directions at once. In the sudden echo, someone laughed, but it was not the laugh of a single throat. It was layered, multivalent, like a cassette tape recorded over itself until the words grew new meanings. Inside that laugh, I heard an accusation. You left us. The pylons hummed harder, a low mechanical chant that dug into the inside of my teeth. My head began to swim with flashes. Memories that might have been mine and might have been stories borrowed from other nights. A funeral with a closed casket, a neighbor who stopped waving, dinners left on tables gone cold. Each flash left me with the impression of being noticed, then ignored, by people whose life had continued without me. I wanted to call out, to ask why they followed, why they wore my town like a mask. But when I opened my mouth, the whispering chorus filled it and formed words I did not remember learning. They said simply, "Come home." I ran because running felt like an argument I could win. The first steps were pure animal, legs pumping, lungs burning, the world reduced to the rhythm of my feet against the road. For a second, I believed the fog would swallow me, and that would be the end, a clean erasure. But the fog was patient and full of intention. It folded around my shoulders like a hand and guided me back. Each time I thought I had put distance between us, the line reappeared farther down the lane, waiting as if the road itself had only ever been a corridor leading me home. They never hurried. Hurry would have meant confusion, and whatever had gathered in that field had no confusion left. One of them, the tall man with the paper-skin face, lifted a hand and pointed. A pressure pushed at my sternum, intimate and inexorable, like a memory I could not refuse. My throat tasted of rust and rain. When I looked down, my hands were shaking, and the residue under my nails had freshened, sticky and warm. I could smell something else now, baking bread, a mother's perfume long gone, and it tore at me with a sweetness I couldn't trust. Somewhere between panic and surrender, my mind scavenged childhood images, a kitchen light left on, a radio set to nothing, my mother closing the door with the same tired click she always used. Faces in the crowd blurred, then sharpened. Men I had argued with, women I had let pass on the sidewalk, a kid who used to laugh at the same stupid jokes as me. The recognition was a fossil opening, private histories exposed to the wet light. They knew me because they had been waiting for me to remember them. They knew me because I had forgotten them first. I tried to pull a pistol from the glove compartment, and my fingers found only a rock-solid mass of keys and a folded photograph. Me, smiling at a party, arms slung over the shoulder of someone whose eyes had been replaced by small, hollow coins the last time I'd seen him. The photo was warm, as if pressed against a living chest. My breath hitched. I pressed the picture to my face and felt the echo of 1,000 small hands pressing back. The chorus rose until it was a physical thing, a pressure in my sinuses, a vibration in my bones. They were not asking anymore. They were instructing. The nearest face leaned close enough that I could see the wet film in its eyes, like recent rain on a windshield. It smelled like the inside of a church and the stale beer of a Tuesday night. It said my name and then nothing else because it didn't have to. I remember thinking, absurdly, that there would have been a fight or a scream or at least a shot fired into the air, some definitive punctuation. Instead, there was the quiet of people resuming a conversation they'd paused for years. I felt my shoulders drop as if a coat I had been carrying for decades had finally been taken from me. I walked toward him. I went when they called.
Subscribe to Horror Story Bar.